Well, welcome. My name is Dean Bortz, and I work with Lancaster Safety Consulting Incorporated as one of their independent contractors. What drives me to safety? As a young person, I witnessed a fatality, and beyond the shock and horror of the scene, it made me upset and angry because it was totally preventable. And I decided then and there as a young person that I would do my best to make sure that I never saw that again, and nobody I worked with ever saw that again. In over 5 decades in the construction and industry, I have only 5 recordable incidences, 4 sprains and a broken leg. I went one time 8 years, over 5 million man hours with 0 lost time. So I know it can be done. Oh, construction. It's dangerous. People get hurt. 2/3 of the 15 people getting killed today at work are in construction. Oh, well, that is unacceptable. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here today. And I'm pleased to work with our co-host from Lancaster.
Hey, Dean, so good to have you. My name's Emily, and if this is your first time joining a Lancaster Safety webinar, let me just give you a little quick background about us. Lancaster Safety is a nationwide OSHA compliance firm specializing in keeping employees safe on the job while keeping businesses OSHA compliant. We have been recognized by OSHA as a VPP Star Mobile Workforce, which is a prestigious accomplishment. We've worked directly with and alongside OSHA compliance safety and health officers. We've even had a few former OSHA officials on our team as well. And now, most importantly, our goal is to help keep businesses keep their employees safe on the job and return home at the end of the day. Our team is really passionate, as you can hear from Dean, about safety, and we host various safety and health webinars for free in order to pay it forward and provide helpful information that might just prevent accidents. So we have a really important topic for you today, and some of the things that we're going to talk about focuses on contractual safety obligations and multi-employer work sites common to construction projects. We're going to talk about contractual obligations, new hires, and how your safety track record impacts insurance premiums and bonding costs. So if you think safety is expensive, try an accident. So with that, Dean, I'm going to hand it over to you, and we'll get right into it.
Great, Emily. Thank you so much. One of the things that most people don't understand about a construction project today, we all know that no one company has all the experience, wherewithal, and personnel to do everything. So it's oftentimes a team and a collaboration, a partnership between a general contractor or construction manager, prime contractors, subcontractors, subcontractors, material suppliers, as well as the design professionals and owners. And to make it into a real simple equation, one job site times multiple contractors equals many hazards. It gets tricky to determine who's responsible for ensuring that all areas of the job site are safe for workers. You add in an OSHA inspection at the job site unannounced, and the equation gets much more complicated. So in this situation, where there are multiple contractors, which company will be cited? You may be surprised to hear the answer is not as straightforward as you think. The general contractor or construction manager on the site is contractually responsible for the overall project safety. However, subcontractors, suppliers, and visitors may also be responsible for project safety and receive OSHA citations and penalties. In this webinar, we're going to take a look at OSHA's multi-employer citation policy and dive into the safety and health responsibilities each construction employer has on the job site. We'll also take a look at some best safety practices that you can use to reduce accident, insurance, and bonding costs. This webinar is geared toward construction safety and business-minded employers, so don't miss it. Let's get right to it. Emily?
All right, so let me ask you a question here. Who can actually be fined by OSHA?
And the answer is everyone. Again, as we'll see, while the contractual responsibility is that of the entity that signed the contract for construction to do the project, there are flow-down language, everyone, no matter what role they play, major or minor, short-term or long-term, has responsibility. So that multi-employer and citation policy, which has been around since the late 1990s, is coming more and more into the fore with OSHA. We're going to see a recent example of an OSHA citation and penalty based upon this. Again, it's been in effect since 1999. You can check this out for yourself. This is a reprint from Safety and Health magazine articles. Phelps Construction, $70,000 citation for one willful, was the controlling contractor. Okay, they had the general supervisory authority. They signed the contract for construction, but they also have not only the authority to correct safety violations, as well as those they create, those they're responsible for, but also to compel others to correct them as well. One of their other contractors was fined $18,000 for one serious and one willful violation. So let's get an idea of what exactly we mean by multi-employer worksite. Basically, OSHA has these definitions. Something that's fairly straightforward. The creating employer. What employer caused the hazardous condition that allegedly violates an OSHA standard? Okay, pretty straightforward. What about the exposing employer? This is the employer whose own employees are exposed to the hazard. Correcting employer. This is an employer who is engaged, again, in a common undertaking, keyword, phrase, as the exposing employer and is responsible for correcting the hazard. Oftentimes, these are all the same entity, but not necessarily, because it comes down to the controlling employer. Employer has general supervisory authority over the worksite and has the contractual authority and power to correct or prevent safety and health violations. So this post will be emailed to you after this webinar, and it helps remind us of what role do you play. And again, this can be all the same entity or it can be different entities depending on what happens and where. Where you're going to find this is the standard safety language, roles and responsibilities specified are found in the general conditions of the contract for construction. These are time and court-tested general conditions available from several prominent organizations that go back to the 19th century. The American Institute of Architects, or AIA, has a form AIA A201. The last edition was 2017, often used in building projects. The Engineers Joint Construction Documents Committee, or EJCDC, has a form C700. These general conditions are oftentimes used in infrastructure projects, horizontal, roadway, utility work. There's also one from the Design Build Institute of America, Form 535, primarily used in design build projects, as well as consensus docs, which is a consortium of general contractors and subcontractors, series 200 and 400. There are others as well, but these are the primary ones you'll see. And these are used because they have been used over time. They've gone through a variety of legal tests. And so there's something that are fairly reliable and understood by most people. While the specific language in each one of these documents will differ, the concept is still the same. So, boy, we all need new help, don't we? And new workers to the project and your company have an advantage you may not think about over your current workforce when it comes to safety. They're going to see things you don't. Why? Because they are new. Take advantage of this. Partner your latest hire with an experienced worker. The experienced worker will show them the ropes, how it's done. It'll help shorten that learning curve and bring a good orientation and perspective to your organization. But the new worker brings a fresh perspective to the project as well. It really comes down to two concepts. If you don't document it, it didn't happen. And if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So take advantage of everyone that's on the project for your company and encourage others, subs, suppliers, to do the same. Why is your safety track record important? Well, let's face it, you make or break your reputation in the construction industry for your performance, one project at a time. Regardless if you're a design professional, construction manager, skilled trades, subcontractor, supplier, testing laboratory, authority having jurisdiction, it doesn't matter. You create a track record for performance on the job, and you create a track record of safety. This directly impacts your production and overhead costs. Let's remind ourselves that safety pays and accidents cost. In fact, many construction project owners, especially in public sector, will not even permit contractors on projects with a track record of accidents. So how is this measured? It's not just insurance premiums you pay for your everyday work practice. It's also premiums you pay for workers' compensation that are affected by your track record on safety. Your premium is based upon the work you do and where you do it. The so-called base or manual rate is established by documenting the work you perform. That rate is then multiplied by what's called an Experience Modification Ratio or Rate, or EMR. This EMR is a review of your safety track record for the past 3 years. It's adjusted annually. And this reflects the relationships of premiums that you pay into workers' compensation, as well as claims paid out to injured workers. So an EMR of more than 1 indicates there's a lack of safety training and performance. An EMR less than 1 reflects an emphasis on safety culture. Okay, that's nice. So how does this affect your bid, quote, proposals to win the next project? Take an example. Here's 2 companies competing for the same project. Each company pays, let's say, $100,000 in annual workers' compensation policy coverage for the work they do, their competitors. Safe Company A has an EMR of 0.6 because they've done a good job with safety. So that means they will pay $60,000 for that $100,000 policy coverage. Unsafe Company B has an EMR of 1.6 and will pay $160,000 for that same coverage, or $100,000 more. If things stay as they are, that's $1 million over 10 years. What would you do with a $100,000 competitive advantage on a project? Yeah, exactly. Also, if you want to calculate how much you might spend on an injury, on the OSHA website, they do have a safety pays estimator. You can take a look at OSHA.gov, safety pays, and you'll find a calculator. I have found for every dollar that I spent on safety, I documented at least $7 I got back, ROI, return on investment. I also found those 5 recordables I mentioned at the beginning, that for every dollar I spent at least $20 I could document. Okay, that means I'm spending 20 to 1. So again, it's really simple. You think safety is expensive? Try an accident. So that was a good example. Let's take a look at an actual client success. This is reported to Lancaster by a long-term granite manufacturer in Colorado. They've completed their OSHA forms. They reported a 42% reduction in injuries from the previous year and a 72% reduction in days away from work. When they met with their workers' comp agent, they determined that since Lancaster came on board to assist them with their programs and policies and procedures and training, their EMR went from 1.7 to 0.84. In other words, cut in half. Okay, numerically, that doesn't sound like a lot. But remember the previous example? So if that's a $100,000 policy, they went from paying $170,000 to paying $84,000 for the same coverage. What could you do with that advantage? I think we know.
All right, Dean, so let me ask you this question. What are the direct and indirect costs of an accident?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because as just the label implies, direct costs of an accident is what I can document very easily. It could be a medical bill, it could be lost wages, compensation, ambulance ride, whatever it may be. And that's really straightforward. It's the indirect costs. Oftentimes we don't see it. And to show you a good example graphically, let's think of an iceberg, okay? So your direct costs, again, are the compensation, the wages to the injured worker, the medical bills, right? You get a copy of that, you can pretty figure that out. But it's the indirect and uninsured or underinsured cost. So it's not just the injured employee, their wages. Obviously, you're gonna have reduced productivity if they can still work. And if they can't, what about assisting the injured? What does that cost? The fact you're gonna have decreased productivity and morale. If you've ever experienced, directly or indirectly, an incident, or heaven forbid, a fatality on a construction project, think about what happened the day of, the day after, the week after, maybe even the month after. That's all people can talk about. Plus, we know we have the best people doing the best work, right? Well, what happens when I lose that first string player? Now I got to find a replacement worker. And it's hard enough finding good qualified help today, let alone in an emergency situation in the middle of a project. And what about the work itself? You have to investigate. There's damage to the work that's in place. There could be equipment damage. The schedule's delayed. Materials damaged. Could be a possible shutdown. OSHA shows up. What about the cost to investigate? Obviously, I'm going to have decreased profits, cash flow, my EMR will increase. I may receive a OSHA penalty and the cost of addressing that, let alone contesting it. Claims, what about dealing with OSHA or dealing with the media or the owner of the project? They don't want to hear about why you're not performing. You shouldn't have had the accident. So my project can be delayed because of your carelessness? And what does that mean for economic cost? That's really hard to measure. What is this going to do to you down the road? You really can't tell, can you? So if you think about it, oftentimes we don't see those indirect costs. It's many times that. 2/3 of the deaths at work every day occur in the construction industry. And again, I'm not a big fan of statistics, but last year, about 15 people got killed at work every day. 10 of them are in our industry. Combine that with thousands of injuries, short and long-term disabilities, and let's face it, construction safety is not an optional event. So, by improving my project safety program, the company's safety culture, and encouraging people to report near hits and near misses, I'm going to lower my liability insurance costs, my all risk premium costs, and my bid, performance, and payment bond costs will go down because I'm more competitive. I can perform. I stay on schedule. I'll complete the project on or under budget, on or ahead of schedule, safely. So it's simple to say, sometimes it's hard to do, especially if you have folks that, why we have this new program for? We've been doing okay. I've been doing this for years. I'm a highly trained journeyman, something I do all the time. Just passing through, didn't think anybody'd notice. My favorite, let's just get her done. And of course, what's the matter? I haven't got hurt. At the end of that long list is what 3-letter word? Yet, and that's the key. I can do it 1,000 times. It's that next one that might get me. Now, we're not here to be paranoid, but we need to be more aware and deliberate, prepare ourselves properly to do our work, engineer out hazards, use good work practices and training, proper PPE, and let's live to fight another day. Again, when you sign that contract for construction, or you agree to perform as a subcontractor or furnish material or do an inspection, contractors are responsible for initiating, maintaining, and supervising safety precautions and programs. It's one of the main contractual obligations you have on a project, in addition to scheduling, supervision, and making sure that you determine the means and methods to execute that design to provide that owner and turn that project into a facility they can use for their benefit. So the responsibility for safety and protection to prevent damage, injury, or loss. You're doing this not only to the employees on the workplace, your own employees, but the subs, material suppliers, as well as work, materials, and equipment. And don't forget about other property at or just adjacent to the site that could be damaged because of carelessness or poor safe practices. If you take a look, it's pretty straightforward. Contractors shall, in other words, it's required, comply with applicable safety laws, statutes, ordinances, codes, rules, and regulations, and lawful orders. Erect and maintain safeguards. Exercise utmost care with hazardous materials or explosives. Remedy damage and loss. Designate an employee with a duty of prevention of accidents, competent person, and not permit loading and unloading that may cause damage or unsafe conditions. Prevent injury or damage to persons or properties. If any party suffers injury or damage because of an act or omission of the other party, written notice is required. Notice should contain information to enable an investigation. This is all language common to all general conditions of the contract for construction. And if they're not, they're often modified and superseded by the supplementary conditions to the contract for construction, which are unique to each project. What about liability? We know it's a big issue. We know it's about risk. Contractors purchase and maintain insurance to protect yourself from claims resulting from operations under the contract at its limits specified or required. Things such as workers' compensation, bodily injury or death to your own employees as well as other employees, subcontractors, material suppliers, or personal injury liability, damage because of injury or destruction of tangible property, the use of motor vehicles, heavy equipment, damage arising out of completed operations that have to be redone, as well as contractual liability. These are all features. Oftentimes you'll see a term called, says all risk insurance, and that's nice. It's sort of like Prego, it's in there, right? Spaghetti sauce. But sometimes you don't need all that. And sometimes you may need a rider. If I'm working, say, on a wastewater plant or other areas where there might be environmental concerns, I may need to put a rider on my policy that will give me additional protection on that particular project. So take a look at insurance, especially liability and all risk, and make sure that you have the coverage you need for the work and project you're doing. We can go on, but we're not going to. Here are some key points I hope you can take from this presentation. First and foremost, safety is contractually the contractor's responsibility. Subcontractors, suppliers, visitors, or anyone on the project site is subject to the contract conditions, especially for safety, via the flow down language and OSHA's multi-employer citation policy. So make sure every visitor signs in and goes through the orientation as escorted properly. You can proactively impact the project by safe work practices, training, documentation, meeting, and in fact, exceeding the OSHA standards that apply to the work you're doing on that site. Having fewer accidents is going to reduce your direct and indirect costs for the project, and it lowers your insurance and bond premiums for your company over time, especially workers' compensation costs. You do these things, you're more competitive, you'll win more work and projects, improve your profitability, market share, and reputation. Your company grows and the best workers want to be a part of it because you have a culture of safety. The choice is yours. Safety pays.
All right, well, that was a lot of information, and I hope everybody got as much out of that as I did. I want to thank you, Dean. I always enjoy hosting these with you. I know I learn a lot, and a big thank you to everyone that attended with us today. You know, we know that each of your safety challenges will be unique, and we know that frustration often occurs because people don't know where to turn for help. And Lancaster Safety can take away that burden of doing OSHA research, determining what topics will address your project safety, company program, and training needs. So we create programs and conduct the trainings for you with highly qualified trainers just like Dean. So if you're interested in that, definitely give us a call today at 888-403-6026, or you can go to our website at lancastersafety.com. We'd also really love to have your feedback. So if you want to leave us a message in the chat, you can do so. Again, Dean, thank you so much for hosting this with me, and we hope to have you again soon.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity to share some of my experiences, and I'm continually learning as well. And I encourage each of us, whether you're competing or just something internally, let's be safe out there.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful, safe day.